The fog clung to the narrow, dirt lane of Marlow Hollow like a living thing, curling around the skeletal branches of gnarled trees. Officer Daniel Hayes tightened his jacket against the cold as Rex, his K-9 partner, froze mid-step, eyes locked on something ahead. There, in the shadowed curve of the road, an abandoned stroller swayed gently, though no wind stirred. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and decay. Rex growled low, a sound threaded with warning and fear. Daniel's stomach knotted. He crouched, heart hammering, and peered inside, and the sight stopped his breath entirely. The morning air in Marlow Hollow was brittle, tasting faintly of ash and wet leaves. Daniel Hayes walked slowly down the narrow lane, Rex at his side, muscles taut, ears swiveling at every subtle sound. The town was quiet, too quiet, but Daniel had learned long ago that silence in a place like this never meant peace. Somewhere off the road, a dog barked, sharp and desperate, fading into the mist. The stroller had been swaying in place since he arrived. Its small wheels had sunk slightly into the mud, as though time itself had weighed it down. The canopy, threadbare and speckled with mildew, shifted with the occasional breeze, revealing glimpses of the cold, pale ground beneath. Daniel's chest tightened. Something about it felt wrong. He crouched beside Rex, letting the dog sniff cautiously around the stroller's frame. The growl had not left Rex's throat. It vibrated with the same unease Daniel felt crawling up his spine. Every instinct in him screamed that this was more than an abandoned object. "Hey," Daniel murmured softly, more to calm himself than the dog. "Let's see who left you here." Rex's ears twitched, but he stayed put, a silent sentinel over the stroller. Daniel lifted the edge of the canopy. Inside was nothing. At first glance. Then, a small bundle shifted, covered in a thin, torn blanket. Daniel froze. The smell hit him, faint, chemical, metallic. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Rex, stay," he whispered, voice trembling despite himself. The bundle moved again, and Daniel realized it wasn't just a blanket. There was a life under there. Shallow breaths, uneven, almost imperceptible. The infant's face was pale, eyes squeezed shut, lips cracked. Daniel's hands shook as he scooped the child up, holding the tiny body against his chest. "God, what happened?" Rex pressed his side against Daniel's leg, growling low but unwavering, as if understanding that the danger hadn't ended. The scene felt wrong on a fundamental level. The stroller had been positioned deliberately, not left by accident. Someone had wanted it found. Daniel's radio crackled, breaking the silence. "Hayes, you copy?" His voice was shaky, almost foreign to him. "Yeah. I've got a child. We need." Static swallowed his words. He glanced around the fog-shrouded lane. No houses were visible, no other cars, no people. Just the skeletal outlines of trees and the damp path curling into nothingness. Marlow Hollow wasn't a large town, but it had corners like this, abandoned, hidden. Dangerous. He pulled his jacket tighter around the baby and started walking back toward his patrol car, Rex padding silently at his side. The stroller stayed behind, a ghostly marker of something unspeakable. Inside the police station, the child was rushed to the hospital. Daniel stood in the cold break room, staring at the peeling linoleum floor, the weight of guilt and fear pressing down. He couldn't stop thinking about the stroller, about the hands that had left it there, about why Rex had reacted the way he did. That growl, it wasn't a normal warning. It was almost personal. Later that evening, Daniel returned to the lane, flashlight cutting through the mist. The stroller had been taken away by evidence, but marks in the mud told him someone, or something, had been here before him. Footprints that didn't match the town's usual inhabitants. A scent, faint and chemical, lingering in the damp air. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Chief Reynolds. "Good work today. Child safe. Don't push yourself. Something about this doesn't sit right." Daniel stared at the text, feeling the weight of unspoken warning. He knew Reynolds wasn't one to mince words. If the chief said it didn't sit right, then it definitely didn't. Back at home, Daniel couldn't sleep. Shadows moved across the walls as the wind rattled the window panes. He found himself pacing, thinking about the baby, about the stroller, about the quiet growl of Rex. He had been a cop long enough to recognize patterns, but this was something different. Something calculated. The next day, Daniel went back to the lane, this time with a notebook. He began mapping the path, tracing footprints, examining the surrounding woods. The footprints led to a thicket at the edge of the lane, a place locals avoided. Broken branches suggested someone had dragged something heavy, or small, through there. A sound made him freeze. A voice, barely audible, calling his name. "Danny!" He spun. No one. Only the fog, curling around the trees like smoke. Rex growled, nose to the ground, tail stiff. Daniel's thoughts raced. The voice, it wasn't over the radio. It was close, human, and somehow familiar. He tried to dismiss it as exhaustion, as nerves, but the knot in his stomach wouldn't loosen. Later that night, in the station, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the baby's eyes. Closed, fragile, trusting. Something inside him recoiled at the thought that whoever left the stroller could do it again. And he feared they already had. The next morning, he found a note slipped under his door. Small, folded, written in a careful hand. "You shouldn't have found it. You don't know the half of it. M." Daniel's blood ran cold. He didn't recognize the handwriting. Whoever M was, they were watching, waiting. And somehow, they had known he would be the one to find the stroller. Rex whimpered softly, pressing against his leg. Daniel knelt, running a hand over the dog's thick coat. "We're in this together, buddy. Whatever it is, we'll face it." But deep down, Daniel knew, this was only the beginning. The stroller was a warning. And Marlow Hollow had more secrets than he was ready to uncover. That night, he stayed on the lane, car parked under the skeletal trees. Fog rolled in thick, swallowing the road. Every snap of a twig made him jump. Every shadow looked like a figure watching him. Rex sat alert, ears twitching. And then, from the mist, Daniel heard it, soft, almost inaudible crying. He grabbed his flashlight, heart hammering, and stepped into the fog. And something moved just beyond the beam, something small, fast, and impossibly quiet. Daniel froze. Rex growled low, warning, not attacking. The chase had begun. The morning fog in Marlow Hollow was heavier than usual, clinging to the skeletal trees and curling along the dirt lane like smoke from some distant fire. Daniel Hayes leaned against his patrol car, hands shoved into his coat pockets, eyes fixed on the twisting path that led into the woods. Rex sat alert beside him, ears twitching, every muscle coiled, ready to spring. He had been awake for nearly 24 hours, and exhaustion gnawed at his body, but sleep was impossible. The stroller, the baby, the note. "You shouldn't have found it. You don't know the half of it. M." All of it played over and over in his mind. Someone was deliberately orchestrating terror, leaving breadcrumbs for him to follow. Daniel took a deep breath, letting the cold air burn his lungs. "All right, buddy. Let's find out who's behind this," he murmured. Rex nudged his hand, tail stiff, as though agreeing. The path into the woods was narrow, barely more than a trodden line through tangled underbrush. Daniel followed the footprints he had tracked yesterday, twisted and uneven, some pressed deep into mud, others barely visible. The ground was littered with broken twigs and leaves, the remains of a storm from the night before. Each step brought a fresh wave of unease, the silence pressing down on him. Halfway through the thicket, Rex stopped, nose twitching, and growled low. Daniel froze. He could feel the tension in the dog's body. Something was ahead. Through the fog, a cabin emerged, a structure long abandoned, its paint peeled to bare wood, windows shuttered, roof sagging, and the door barely hanging on rusty hinges. Daniel's stomach twisted. Whoever left the stroller here wanted him to find this place, wanted him to step inside. Rex moved cautiously, body low, tail stiff. Daniel followed, flashlight sweeping the dark interior. Dust motes danced in the beam. Broken furniture, crates overturned, remnants of long-decayed life littered the floor. The air smelled of mold, rust, and something faintly metallic, like iron and decay. Then he saw it, another stroller, identical to the first. The wheels were caked in mud, the fabric torn. A thin blanket covered the seat, damp with dew. Daniel's hands shook as he approached. His flashlight fell on a scrap of paper tucked beneath the wheel. He picked it up, heart hammering. "You're too late. Or are you?" No signature. No hint of who it came from. Just a warning, precise and deliberate. Daniel swallowed hard. A sudden creak behind him made him spin. Rex growled low, ears flat, tail stiff. Daniel's flashlight cut the shadows, revealing a figure emerging from the corner, a woman. Tall, wiry, face lined with years of hard living, eyes cold and calculating. "Who are you?" Daniel demanded, hand on his holster. The woman smiled faintly, unsettling in its calmness. "Someone who knows more than you think," she said. Her voice was soft, almost casual, but there was an edge to it, like a blade hidden beneath silk. "Protecting the baby?" Daniel asked, suspicion lacing his words. "Protecting," she repeated, shaking her head. "That's a word that assumes morality. Sometimes, protecting means making impossible choices. Sometimes, it means letting the innocent suffer to stop greater harm." Daniel's stomach churned. He had learned in his years on the force that vague philosophical threats often preceded something far more tangible and dangerous. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice tight. "I'm here because you're curious," she replied, "and curiosity is dangerous. You should leave. Now." Before Daniel could respond, the cabin door slammed behind him. The fog outside swirled violently, and a faint metallic odor filled the cabin, stronger than before. Daniel's pulse spiked. He scanned the corners, gun raised, heart hammering. Then she stepped back into the shadows, almost disappearing. "Follow the trail," she whispered, "and learn the truth. But trust no one completely." Daniel's thoughts raced as he left the cabin, heart pounding, mind spinning. The footprints outside were newer than he expected. Someone had returned after he found the stroller. The trail twisted through the woods, over mud, under low-hanging branches, and toward a decrepit barn he had noticed days before but never investigated. By mid-afternoon, the trail ended at the barn. Its doors hung crookedly, and weeds grew through cracks in the foundation. Daniel approached slowly, flashlight cutting a narrow path through the dim interior. The air smelled of hay, mold, and a faint chemical tang he couldn't place. Inside, in the weak sunlight filtering through a hole in the roof, he found the third stroller. The wheels were new, clean, and the blanket inside looked freshly laundered. Beneath it, Daniel froze. The baby's eyes were open, unervingly aware, even for an infant. "Rex," Daniel murmured, hand resting on the dog's head. The dog growled low, hackles raised. A soft, deliberate laugh echoed from the shadows. A man stepped forward, rugged, lean, mid-40s, eyes sharp, smile cruel. "You've been wondering about me," he said, voice smooth, deliberate. "I'm M. You found the first one, the second, now the third. Perfect timing." Daniel's stomach knotted. "Why are you doing this? What's the point?" "I'm testing you," M said. "Testing your limits. Seeing what you'll risk. Seeing if you'll cross the lines you swore you never would." Daniel felt his blood turn cold. The babies, the strollers, the notes, it had all been orchestrated to manipulate him. "You won't get away with this," he said, teeth clenched. M shrugged. "I already have." From the corner, the woman from the cabin stepped forward, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You shouldn't be here," she said. M's expression shifted slightly, recognition, maybe even respect. "Ah, the wild card. I wondered when you'd arrive." Daniel's mind raced. Surrounded by two people whose motives were murky at best, the babies as pawns in a dangerous game, and Rex growling at every shadow, Daniel realized he had walked straight into a trap. M's gaze locked on him. "You think you're in control. You're not. And the people you trust most, they're not who you think they are." Daniel's pulse raced. The woman's face remained unreadable, her expression hinting at alliances and betrayals he couldn't decipher. Then, a sound, a vehicle approaching. Another set of footsteps. Someone else was coming. Daniel felt the weight of the entire situation pressing on him. Every decision from this point could mean life or death. Every step could unravel the fragile trust between him, the woman, and the babies. And he didn't know which side he could trust, if any. "Everything you've seen," M said, voice low, deliberate, "is just the beginning. And the choices you make next will define what kind of man you truly are." Daniel's hands tightened on his holster. His eyes swept the barn, the strollers, the babies, the shadows, the potential for betrayal everywhere. He realized that courage alone wouldn't save him. He needed clarity, strategy, and, most importantly, trust, but trust was now a commodity rarer than life itself. Rex growled, a warning that cut through the thick silence. Daniel knew the dog sensed the imminent danger long before any human could. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself, scanning the barn again. "Think, not act." M chuckled softly, the sound echoing across the wooden beams. "Oh, I like him. He thinks. Let's see if he can survive thinking." The woman shifted slightly, her gaze piercing Daniel's. There was something unspoken in her eyes, a warning, a clue, a plea. He didn't know whether she was friend or foe, and in that moment, he realized that in Marlow Hollow, the line between good and evil had blurred entirely. Outside, the wind rattled the barn's roof. A crow cawed somewhere, startling Rex, who lunged toward the sound. Daniel's heart raced, realizing the night would bring no relief, only more shadows, more questions, more challenges. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I don't know who I can trust," he muttered, "but I'm not letting this end like it started. I won't let the innocent suffer." M's smile widened, eyes gleaming in the dim light. "That's the spirit. But the real test is yet to come." Daniel looked at Rex. The dog's eyes were sharp, unwavering. He realized that no matter what human deception awaited, Rex's instincts might be his only true guide. The fog outside thickened, crawling along the wooden beams, the shadows stretching and twisting. Somewhere in the distance, a faint, metallic scrape echoed. The game was far from over, and Daniel knew that the choices he made tonight would haunt him forever. With a final glance at the babies, at the strollers, and at the two enigmatic figures surrounding him, Daniel prepared himself. Whatever came next, he would face it. He had no choice. The night swallowed them, leaving only the faint glow of sunlight cutting through the gaps in the roof, highlighting the fragile innocence in the strollers, and the lurking danger that had orchestrated everything. And Daniel knew, with cold certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. Night had fallen over Marlow Hollow like a thick, suffocating blanket. The skeletal trees whispered in the wind, their shadows stretching over the lane like long, accusing fingers. Daniel Hayes stood in the center of the old barn, his breath visible in the cold air. 3 strollers sat before him, silent witnesses to the nightmare orchestrated by forces he was only beginning to understand. Rex, alert and tense, scanned the shadows, low growl vibrating in his chest. M stood near the first stroller, arms crossed, eyes sharp and calculating. The woman from the cabin, the wild card, leaned against a beam, her face unreadable, but her eyes glimmered with intelligence and warning. Daniel's heart raced. He knew this night would demand choices he might regret forever. "You've come far," M said, voice smooth and unnerving. "But far isn't enough. You need to understand why this has happened. Only then will you survive what's coming." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Enough games. Where are the baby's parents? What do you want from them?" "From me?" M's smile was faint, almost amused. "I'm not your enemy, Daniel. But neither am I your friend. I'm an observer, a judge. You've been tested, yes, but this last test will determine whether the innocent remain safe or perish." Daniel's mind raced. Every instinct screamed danger. He glanced at the woman. "And you? Are you helping him? Or something else?" She stepped closer, voice low, cutting. "I'm not here to help anyone, Daniel. I'm here because I have my own debts to settle. Sometimes that means guiding someone, sometimes that means watching them fail. Choose wisely." Daniel's hands tightened on his holster. Rex growled, hackles raised. The dog's instincts were screaming what Daniel's mind couldn't yet process. He had learned to trust Rex in situations like this. M stepped toward the second stroller. "Look closely. Each one is a message, a test of moral instinct. One choice, one hesitation, and lives could end. You've already saved one, yes, but the others depend on you making the right call." Daniel took a deep breath, forcing calm into his racing thoughts. "Then tell me what to do. Where are the parents? Who left them here?" M's eyes gleamed. "No one is coming. The parents were removed long before the first stroller appeared. And their absence is not an accident. The only way to save these children is to confront the truth, Your truth, Daniel. And your trust, or lack thereof, will determine the outcome. The woman's gaze flicked to M. You can't control everything, you know. Even you. M's eyes darkened. I control enough. That's why I'm here. That's why he's here. And that's why you're about to see the final consequence of choices made and ignored. Daniel's stomach churned. The weight of responsibility pressed down like stone. The babies were innocent. Their safety depended on him. But who could he trust? The woman. Even his own judgment felt compromised. A sudden sound, metal scraping wood, echoed from outside. All three of them froze. Rex growled low, baring his teeth. The barn door swung open, revealing a figure crouched in the shadows. A young man, ragged and terrified, stepped forward. Daniel squinted. Recognition struck like a lightning bolt. The boy's face, pale, dirt-smeared, belonged to one of the children's older siblings from a missing persons report he had been investigating quietly. You, Daniel stammered. You're alive. But what happened? The boy's voice trembled. They said if anyone came looking, the babies would be gone. I tried to warn you, but, his eyes darted to M, he's dangerous. They all are. M's gaze sharpened. Careful what you reveal, Daniel. Every word could undo months of preparation. Daniel's mind snapped. The pieces fell together, the abandoned strollers, the missing parents, the carefully orchestrated terror. And then he realized, M had been manipulating not just him but the entire town. The babies were bait, the parents removed to force compliance, to measure his moral choices under pressure. Rex, Daniel whispered, hand on the dog's head. Stay ready. M moved toward the third stroller. Here is the final choice. One baby, one decision. Save or hesitate. Every moment counts. Daniel's hands shook. He glanced at the woman. Why are you here? Are you going to stop him or let this happen? Her eyes were hard. I'll let you make the choice. That's your test. Not mine. Daniel's heart pounded. Time slowed. Every instinct screamed urgency. His mind raced with options, consequences, moral weight pressing on him like never before. And then he noticed something. The blanket in the third stroller was slightly askew. He lifted it. Inside was not a baby. Not at all. It was a mirror. A small, handheld mirror reflecting his own eyes, wide with fear, sweat, and disbelief. He froze. Rex growled furiously. The woman stepped forward. The final test wasn't about the babies. It was about you. M's expression was calm, almost cruelly satisfied. You see, every decision you thought would save lives, every hesitation, every instinct, it was measured. You were the test subject, Daniel. The children, the strollers, a stage. And you passed, or failed, depending on your perception. Daniel staggered back. Rage, relief, horror, and exhaustion swirled within him. He had been manipulated, deceived, and toyed with. But the emotional weight, the fear for innocent lives, the bond with Rex, it had been real. The woman's voice cut through the haze. You have the strength to care deeply. That's what made this effective. That's why he brought you here. But the choice to act morally, even when manipulated, is yours alone. Daniel sank to his knees, chest heaving, eyes locked on Rex. We survived. No one was hurt. Right. M nodded slowly. For now. But remember, Daniel, vigilance is the only safeguard. Trust sparingly. Care deeply. And never assume the world is as simple as right and wrong. The woman gave him a fleeting, approving nod, then slipped silently into the shadows of the barn, disappearing like a wisp of smoke. Outside, the fog had lifted. The skeletal trees swayed gently, and the wind whispered through Marlow Hollow, carrying the residue of a night thick with fear, uncertainty, and moral reckoning. Daniel looked at the strollers, empty, their purpose revealed as a test of courage, morality, and perception. Rex pressed against him, warmth and loyalty anchoring him to reality. Daniel breathed deeply, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from his system. Hours later, at the hospital, Daniel finally allowed himself to sit, resting against the wall. The real babies, The ones removed before the staged strollers had been found by local authorities after he provided subtle clues he had uncovered through careful observation. They were safe, though shaken. Daniel's hands trembled as he filled out reports, reflecting on the night. The moral ambiguity, the psychological manipulation, the betrayal of trust, it would haunt him forever. But one lesson had been cemented: vigilance, loyalty, and moral courage were the only things he could trust. Rex lay at his feet, resting, but alert. Daniel reached down and stroked his head. "We did it, buddy. They're safe. And we survived." Outside, Marlow Hollow slept, unaware of the night's invisible trials, the shadows of manipulation, and the quiet heroism of a man and his K9 who had faced fear, deceit, and moral testing head-on. Daniel stepped outside, breathing the cool morning air. The sun broke through the mist, illuminating the skeletal trees and the winding dirt lane. For a moment, peace, fragile, delicate, and hard-earned, settled over him. The horrors, the manipulation, and the tests would not leave him, but Daniel Hayes had survived. And for the children, for Rex, for himself, he would remain vigilant, moral, and unbroken. M's words echoed faintly in his mind: "Trust sparingly, care deeply, and never assume the world is as simple as right and wrong." And Daniel understood, finally, that survival wasn't just about instincts, courage, or loyalty, it was about conscience. And sometimes, conscience demanded choices no one else could make.